The massive doors of Hangar 7 at Falcon Ridge Air Base were already open to the early morning sun when the day shift arrived. The towering silhouette of a B-2 Spirit bomber dominated the space, its distinctive flying wing design casting long shadows across the polished concrete floor. Ground crews moved with practiced efficiency around the aircraft, preparing it for a potential mission later that day. Tech Sergeant Rodriguez handed a wrench to Airman Davis as they worked on an access panel. "Did you hear about the inspection today?" he asked, wiping grease from his hands. Davis rolled his eyes. "Another one? Didn't we just have the Air Force auditors here last month? Different this time. Some civilian contractor from Washington. System specialist or something." Rodriguez shrugged dismissively. "Probably another desk jockey who's never seen the inside of a real aircraft." The junior mechanics continued their work, occasionally joking about pencil pushers and government. Contractors who couldn't tell a fuel line from a hydraulic hose. Their laughter echoed through the cavernous hangar until the side door opened, allowing a shaft of bright sunlight to cut across the floor. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. The person who entered wasn't what anyone expected. No pressed uniform with ribbons and insignia. No clipboard-wielding bureaucrat in a business suit. Instead, a woman in her mid-30s wearing a simple, unmarked flight suit walked quietly into the hangar. She carried only a tablet and a small personal kit. Nothing about her commanded immediate attention. No name tag. No rank insignia. Nothing but the steady, measured pace of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. "That's her," whispered Davis to Rodriguez. "Doesn't look like much." Rodriguez shrugged. Probably never even touched a real aircraft. The woman, Rain called her, according to the visitor badge clipped to her pocket, moved methodically through the hangar, occasionally stopping to make notes on her tablet. She seemed to take no notice of the sideways glances and whispered comments, her focus entirely on the aircraft and systems around her. When she approached the fuel system that Davis was working on, she paused, watching silently. "Something I can help you with, ma'am?" Davis asked, not bothering to hide his annoyance at being observed. "Just documenting," Rain replied, her voice quiet but assured. Davis resumed his work, deliberately turning his back to her. Standard. Fuel line calibration. Nothing exciting. Rain said nothing, but after observing for another moment, she reached past him and made a small adjustment to the calibration tool. The digital readout immediately stabilized, showing perfect alignment. Davis blinked in surprise. "How did you experience?" she said simply, already moving on to the next station. Staff Sergeant Wilson, who had been watching the exchange, approached Davis after Rain moved away. "Careful with that one," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" Wilson shrugged. "Something's off about her. Civilian contractors don't usually know their way around B-2 systems like that. Especially not the fuel calibration sequence. That's specialized knowledge." Davis glanced over at Rain, now examining a maintenance panel on the opposite side of the hangar. "Maybe she just got lucky." "Maybe," Wilson replied, but he didn't sound convinced. As the morning progressed, Rain continued her methodical inspection of the hangar and aircraft. She moved with an economy of motion that suggested familiarity with military environments, though she wore no insignia to indicate any service background. The mechanics gradually returned to their work, though many kept casting curious glances in her direction. During lunch break, the crew chief pulled up her credentials on the secure terminal. The screen displayed only minimal information. Systems. Consultant, civilian contractor. "That's it?" Rodriguez asked, peering over the chief's shoulder. "No background, no qualifications?" The chief shook his head. "Nothing else accessible at my clearance level." "Weird," muttered Davis. "Think she's some kind of corporate spy? Lockheed trying to steal secrets? On a 20-year-old aircraft. Design?" The chief chuckled. "Doubt it." Rodriguez pulled out his phone. Let me try something. He typed Rain's name into a search engine, scrolling through the results. Nothing. Not even a LinkedIn profile. Who doesn't have a digital footprint these days? Someone who doesn't want to be found, the chief said thoughtfully. Across the hangar, Rain continued her inspection, seemingly oblivious to the discussion about her identity. She moved to the cockpit of the B-2 and peered inside, her fingers hovering over the controls without touching them. For just a moment, something flickered across her face, a look of recognition, perhaps even longing. The afternoon brought new challenges. As Rain observed the communication systems check, she quietly suggested bypassing a secondary router when an error appeared. The system immediately responded, booting up normally. "How did you know that would work?" Davis asked, studying her face carefully. "Common issue with the Mark V system," she replied. "The bypass trick isn't in the manual, but most field technicians know about it." "But you're not a field technician," Davis said suspiciously. Rain held his gaze for a moment. "No," she said simply, then moved away to continue her inspection. Later, when an emergency drill was announced, the crew scrambled to their assigned positions. To everyone's surprise, Rain moved without hesitation to exactly the right position. For the drill scenario, her movements automatic and practiced. Chief Engineer Martinez noticed this and watched her with growing curiosity. Something about her seemed familiar. The way she moved around aircraft, her instinctive understanding of procedures. After the drill, he discreetly accessed a secure terminal and began searching through archived mission files. What he found made him freeze in place. On the screen was a grainy image from 5 years earlier, a younger Rain Calder in full flight gear, standing before a B-2. The file was stamped Classified Black Dawn Operation with a note. Personnel record redacted by order of Air Command. Martinez stared at the screen, then back across the hangar where Rain continued her quiet inspection. Who was this woman really? And why was she back at Falcon Ridge, pretending to be a systems auditor? As the afternoon wore on, tensions in the hangar subtly increased. Word had spread among the senior staff that something wasn't adding up about their visitor. The younger mechanics picked up on the change in atmosphere, their jokes and casual banter gradually falling silent as they focused on their work. Rain seemed to sense the shift as well. Her movements became more guarded, her note-taking more deliberate. She kept her distance from the groups of whispering personnel, focusing entirely on her inspection tasks. The day was ending, but everyone could feel it. Something was building. The woman they dismissed as just another contractor was hiding something significant. And in a place like Falcon Ridge, secrets had a way of coming to light when least expected. As Rain packed up her tablet and prepared to leave, she paused near the B-2's engine housing, her hand resting briefly on the aircraft's surface. In that moment, she looked less like a civilian auditor and more like someone who had once called this magnificent machine home. The truth was closer to the surface than anyone realized, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The next morning arrived with an unusual tension hanging over Hangar 7. Rain Calder returned precisely at 0800, once again in her unmarked flight suit, carrying the same tablet and personal kit. But today felt different. The easy dismissal from the previous day had been replaced by wary curiosity from the ground crew. Tech Sergeant Rodriguez was the first to notice the change in dynamics. As Rain approached his workstation, he found himself straightening unconsciously, his casual demeanor from yesterday nowhere to be found. "Morning, ma'am," he said, his tone notably more respectful than before. Rain nodded acknowledgement. "Sergeant, how's the hydraulic pressure holding on the starboard system?" Rodriguez blinked. Yesterday, she'd been asking general questions about documentation. Today, she was asking about specific technical details that weren't in any routine inspection. Checklist. Pressure's been solid at 3,200 psi, he replied automatically, then caught himself. Ma'am, that information isn't typically part of a systems audit, isn't it? Rain made a note on her tablet. I find hydraulic consistency often indicates overall maintenance quality. Across the hangar, Airman Davis was having his own unsettling encounter. Rain had stopped beside him as he worked on the aircraft's communication array, but instead of simply observing, she'd begun pointing out potential improvement points that weren't in any standard manual. The auxiliary relay tends to overheat. In this configuration, she mentioned casually, you might consider rerouting the power coupling through the secondary channel. Davis paused his work, wrench halfway to a bolt. Ma'am, respectfully, that modification isn't authorized without engineering approval. Of course not, Rain agreed. I'm just noting potential efficiency improvements. But her suggestions were too specific, too knowledgeable. Davis exchanged glances with nearby mechanics, all of whom were beginning to realize their civilian contractor knew far more about the B-2 than any outside auditor should. Chief Engineer Martinez had spent the night researching what little he could find about the Black Dawn operation. The details were still classified, but he'd managed to piece together fragments. A hostage rescue mission 5 years ago. Impossible odds. A single B-2 that had somehow pulled off what an entire squadron couldn't accomplish. The pilot's identity had been scrubbed from official records afterward. He approached Rain during her mid-morning inspection of the navigation systems. Miss Calder, he said carefully, I noticed you seem particularly familiar with the B-2s. Operational parameters. Rain didn't look up from her tablet. I've studied the technical specifications extensively. Have you? Martinez moved closer, lowering his voice. Because the way you move around this aircraft, the questions you're asking, it's not like someone who learned from manuals. For the first time since arriving, Rain's composure flickered. She met Martinez's eyes directly, and he saw something there. Not fear, but a careful assessment. I take my work seriously, Chief, she said finally. I'm sure you do. Martinez nodded slowly. It's just that in my 20 years working on these aircraft, I've only seen that level of intuitive understanding from pilots who've actually flown them. The words hung in the air between them. Rain resumed her work without responding, but Martinez noticed her movements had become more deliberate, more guarded. Meanwhile, Staff Sergeant Wilson had been conducting his own investigation. During lunch, he'd called a contact at the Pentagon, someone who owed him a favor from their deployment days. I need you to run a name for me, Wilson had said quietly. Into his phone, Rain called her. Supposed to be a civilian systems consultant, but something doesn't add up. The response had been immediate and troubling. Wilson, don't ask questions about that name. And if you're smart, you'll forget you heard it. When Wilson returned to the hangar, he found Rain examining the ejection seat systems, an area that definitely wasn't part of any routine audit. Interesting area to inspect, he commented, approaching slowly. Rain didn't seem surprised by his presence. Safety systems are crucial components. They are, Wilson agreed. But civilian contractors typically don't have clearance to examine ejection mechanisms. Those systems are classified. Rain's fingers paused over her tablet. I have the appropriate clearances. Do you? Wilson pulled out his phone, showing her the screen. Because when I tried to verify your background, I got told to stop asking questions. In my experience, that usually means one of two things. Either you're someone very important, or you're someone who's supposed to be invisible. The afternoon brought an unexpected complication. Colonel Harrison, the base commander, arrived for an unscheduled inspection, accompanied by 2 officers. Rain didn't recognize. Their presence immediately changed the atmosphere in the hangar. Where's our systems auditor? Harrison asked Chief Martinez. Over by the fuel system, sir, Martinez replied, gesturing toward Rain. Harrison studied Rain from across the hangar, his expression unreadable. How long has she been here? This is her second day, sir. Yesterday, she seemed like a routine contractor, but today, Martinez hesitated. Today, she's asking questions and making observations that suggest extensive operational knowledge of the B2. One of the officers with Harrison, a stern-faced woman with intelligence insignia, spoke quietly. Sir, we should speak with her directly. As the group approached, Rain seemed to sense their presence. She looked up from her tablet, and for just a moment, her professional mask slipped. The expression that crossed her face was one of recognition, followed immediately by resignation. Ms. Calder, Colonel Harrison called out. Could we have a word? Rain straightened, suddenly looking less like a contractor and more like military personnel. Of course, Colonel. The entire hangar seemed to hold its breath as the group moved to a more private area near the office. Through the glass windows, the mechanics could see an intense conversation taking place, but couldn't make out the words. Davis moved closer to Rodriguez. Think she's in trouble? I think, Rodriguez said slowly. We're about to find out who she really is. Inside the office, Colonel Harrison was studying a classified file on his tablet. Captain Rain Calder, he read aloud. Formerly one of our most decorated B-2 pilots. Officially deceased as of 5 years ago. Rain stood at attention, her civilian facade completely dropped. Sir, the question is, Harrison continued, what is a dead pilot doing conducting systems audits at my base? The intelligence officer leaned forward. Captain, your record shows you were killed in action during the Black Dawn operation. Your memorial service was attended by over 300 personnel. The pilot Rain Calder was killed that day, Rain replied carefully. What remained was classified too highly to continue existing officially. Harrison nodded grimly. And now you're back, hiding in plain sight as a contractor. The question is why? Through the office window, the ground crew watched the tense meeting. Whatever was being discussed, it was clear their mysterious auditor wasn't who she'd claimed to be. Airman Davis turned to the older mechanics. Anyone want to explain what's happening? Chief Martinez, who had been quietly listening to radio chatter, suddenly straightened. Everyone back to work, he commanded. Now, but it was too late. The base alarm system activated. It's urgent. Wail filling the hangar. Emergency lights began flashing as the intercom crackled to life. Attention, all personnel. Code Amber. Repeat, Code Amber. All flight crews report to stations immediately. In the office, Rain's head snapped up at the sound. Through the window, the mechanics could see her posture change completely. No longer a contractor or even a regular officer, but someone responding to a crisis with the instincts of a combat pilot. Colonel Harrison was receiving updates through his earpiece. We have Rangers pinned down overseas, he said grimly. They need immediate air support, but our primary pilot is grounded with medical issues. Rain stepped forward. Sir, request permission to... You're officially dead, Captain. The intelligence officer interrupted. You can't fly a classified mission. Rain's jaw tightened. Those Rangers don't care about my official status, ma'am. Outside, the ground crew was mobilizing for an emergency launch, but they could see the heated discussion continuing in the office. Their mysterious auditor, who was apparently a pilot, was clearly volunteering for something dangerous. Staff Sergeant Wilson turned to his team. I don't know who she really is, he said quietly, but I'm starting to think we're about to find out why they call her the Ghost. The emergency was escalating, and everyone could sense that the carefully maintained fiction of Rain Calder's identity was about to be shattered completely. The heated discussion in the office continued as emergency protocols activated throughout the base. Through the glass, the mechanics could see Rain's posture becoming increasingly tense as Colonel Harrison spoke rapidly into his earpiece. The intelligence officer kept shaking her head. clearly opposing whatever Rain was proposing. Outside, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Tech Sergeant Rodriguez was monitoring radio communications when the desperate voice of the Ranger commander crackled through. Any station, this is Ranger Actual. We are pinned down by enemy armor. Multiple casualties. Request immediate air support or we will be overrun within 60 minutes. The words sent a chill through the hangar. 40 American soldiers were trapped, and conventional air support was hours away. Only a stealth bomber could reach them in time, but their qualified pilot was in the medical bay with severe heat stroke. Staff Sergeant Wilson approached the office door, hoping to catch some of the conversation inside. What he heard made his blood run cold. I don't care what the regulations say. Rain's voice carried through the glass. Those Rangers are going to die if someone doesn't act. Captain, you don't exist, the intelligence officer replied firmly. If this mission fails, if you're captured, if anything goes wrong, it creates an international incident. A dead pilot flying an unauthorized mission would be completely deniable, Rain finished. No official connection to the Air Force. No political complications. That's exactly why this works. Colonel Harrison's voice was strained. The risk to you personally is irrelevant, sir. Those are American soldiers. Suddenly, the office door opened and all three officers emerged. The entire hangar fell silent as they approached the B-2. Rain walked directly to Chief Martinez. Chief, what's the status of this aircraft? Martinez glanced uncertainly at Colonel Harrison, who gave a slight nod. Fully fueled and armed, ma'am. Ready for immediate deployment. Rain nodded, then turned to address the assembled crew. I need this aircraft prepped for emergency launch. Full mission configuration. Airman Davis stepped forward, confusion evident on his face. Ma'am, respectfully, you're a civilian contractor. You can't authorize. No, Rain interrupted, her voice carrying new authority. I'm not. She reached into her personal kit and withdrew a faded patch, the Spirit Talon insignia, awarded only to pilots of the most classified operations. The few senior mechanics who recognized it immediately came to attention. 5 years ago, Captain Rain Calder died during the Black Dawn operation. She continued, her voice steady. What remained was too classified to officially exist. But today, 40 Rangers need someone who can fly this mission. The intelligence officer stepped forward. This is completely unauthorized. If anything goes wrong, then it's on me, Rain replied firmly. No official sanction. No orders from command. Just a civilian contractor who happened to know how to fly. Colonel Harrison weighed the options. His career would be over if this went badly, but those Rangers would be dead if nothing was done. Chief Martinez, he called out. How long to prep for emergency launch? 15 minutes, sir. Harrison nodded grimly. Do it. The hangar exploded into activity. The same mechanics who had dismissed Rain 2 days ago now worked with desperate efficiency to prepare the B-2 for combat. But the tension was palpable. Everyone understood they were participating in something that officially wasn't happening. Rain began suiting up, accepting flight gear from crew members who now looked at her with a mixture of awe and concern. Davis approached hesitantly. Ma'am, I owe you an apology. Yesterday, when you walked in, I thought, you thought exactly what you were supposed to think. Rain replied, adjusting her flight helmet. That was the point. But who are you really? Rain paused in her preparations. Someone who made choices that required her to disappear. But today, that doesn't matter. What matters is getting to those Rangers. As final systems checks were completed, Chief Engineer Martinez pulled Colonel Harrison aside. Sir, I've been thinking about this. If Captain Calder was officially killed 5 years ago, what's she been doing since then? Harrison's expression was grim. According to what little I can access, she's been conducting systems audits at various military installations. Always under different contractor identities, always moving on after a few days. She's been keeping watch, Martinez realized. Making sure our aircraft are mission ready. That's my guess. And now we know why. The radio crackled with another desperate transmission from the Rangers. Any air support. This is Ranger Actual. Enemy armor is within visual range. If anyone is coming, we need them now. Rain finished her final equipment check and turned to face the assembled crew. For a moment, the careful mask she'd worn for 2 days was completely gone. Standing before them was a combat pilot, scarred by whatever had happened during Black Dawn, but ready to risk everything again. "Chief Martinez," she called out. "Aircraft status?" "Ready for immediate departure, Captain." Rain nodded, then surprised everyone by extending her hand to each crew member. "Thank you. All of you." Davis shook her hand, still struggling with the transformation he'd witnessed. "Captain, what happened 5 years ago? During Black Dawn?" Rain's expression darkened. "We saved 100 hostages, but the cost ... She shook her head. "Some missions require sacrifices that can't be officially acknowledged." She climbed the ladder to the cockpit, pausing at the top to look back at the crew. "If I don't make it back, make sure those Rangers know someone tried." "You'll make it back," Staff Sergeant Wilson called out. "That's what ghosts do. They complete the mission and vanish." Rain offered a slight smile. "We'll see." The canopy closed with a hydraulic hiss. Inside the cockpit, Rain began the startup sequence with practiced precision. The massive engines spooled up, their deep rumble filling the hangar. "Tower, this is Spirit 7. Rain's voice came through the radio, requesting immediate departure clearance. "Spirit 7, you are cleared for takeoff. Runway 27. Winds light and variable." As the B-2 taxied toward the runway, Colonel Harrison turned to his intelligence officer. "This conversation never happened. This mission never occurred. Is that understood?" "Sir, if this goes wrong, if this goes wrong, 40 families don't lose their sons and daughters tonight. That's what matters." The distinctive silhouette of the B-2 lifted into the darkening sky, banking sharply toward its distant target. In the hangar, the crew stood in respectful silence, knowing they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Martinez spoke quietly to the group. "Whatever happens next, remember this. Captain Rain Calder died 5 years ago. Today, a civilian contractor borrowed an aircraft to save some lives. That's the story." Davis nodded slowly, finally understanding. "She's been protecting us all along, hasn't she? Moving from base to base, making sure we're ready for moments like this." "That's my guess," Wilson replied. "The Ghost Talon watching over the fleet." Radio communications would be minimal during the mission, but everyone in Hangar 7 would be listening. Somewhere over hostile territory, their mysterious auditor was about to prove exactly who she really was. The waiting began. The command center at Falcon Ridge had been transformed into a nerve center of controlled tension. Multiple screens displayed satellite feeds, weather data, and communication channels, all focused on a mission that officially didn't exist. Colonel Harrison stood behind the communications officer, his jaw tight as he monitored Spirit 7's progress. "Current position?" he asked quietly. "Spirit 7 is maintaining radio silence as planned, sir. Last GPS ping showed her on course. Altitude 35,000 feet, approximately 4 hours from target." In Hangar 7, the ground crew had gathered around a radio, listening to the sporadic updates. The Rangers' situation was deteriorating rapidly. Their last transmission had been particularly desperate. Any station. Enemy armor is closing on our position. We've got wounded who can't be moved. If air support doesn't arrive, In the next 2 hours, we're done for. Chief Martinez adjusted the radio frequency, hoping to catch any word from Rain. Spirit pilots usually maintain communications blackout during penetration, he explained to the younger mechanics. Too much risk of detection. Airman Davis, who had spent the day grappling with his complete misjudgment of Rain, spoke up. Chief, what really happened during Black Dawn? Why was her record erased? Martinez glanced around at the assembled crew, then made a decision. What I'm about to tell you stays in this hangar. Understood? Everyone nodded. 5 years ago, there was a hostage situation overseas. 100 American civilians were being held in a compound that was impossible to reach with conventional forces. Intelligence said it couldn't be done. Too many surface-to-air missiles. Too much hostile territory to cross. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Captain Calder volunteered for a solo mission. 1B2, flying lower than anyone thought possible, carrying precision munitions that had never been tested in combat conditions. Tech Sergeant Rodriguez leaned forward. She pulled it off? More than that. She didn't just complete the mission. She rewrote the book on what was possible. But Martinez's voice dropped. In the process, she had to make choices that weren't authorized. Rules of engagement were exceeded. Enemy targets were eliminated that weren't on the approved list. Meaning? Meaning she saved every hostage, but the political fallout would have been catastrophic if it came to light. So the brass made her disappear. Officially killed in action, full military honors, sealed records. Staff Sergeant Wilson nodded grimly. And unofficially? Unofficially, they gave her a new identity and turned her loose to do what she does best. Keep our aircraft and pilots ready for the impossible missions. The radio crackled with static. Then Rain's voice came through, calm and professional. Command, this is Spirit 7, beginning descent for target approach. Ranger frequency, please confirm your status. The response was immediate and tense. Spirit 7, this is Ranger Actual. We've got enemy tanks less than a kilometer out. Whatever you're planning, we need it now. Roger. Ranger Actual. I have. Visual on your position. Keep your heads down. In the command center, Colonel Harrison gripped the back of a chair. This was the moment of truth. Either Rain would pull off another miracle, or they would lose both her and the Rangers. Meanwhile, 8,000 miles away, Rain was threading the B-2 through a narrow mountain valley at an altitude that would have been considered suicidal for most pilots. The terrain following radar was screaming warnings, but she trusted her instincts more than the computer. The battlefield appeared ahead through her night vision systems. She could see the Rangers' position marked by infrared strobes, and the approaching enemy armor column glowing white-hot against a cooler background. Ranger Actual, I have eyes on hostile forces. Painting targets now. The B-2 sophisticated. Targeting systems locked onto each enemy vehicle in sequence. Rain's fingers moved over the weapons controls with practiced precision. Ranger Actual, weapons hot. Take cover. Roger, Spirit 7. All personnel in cover. Rain completed the final targeting sequence. Weapons away. The bomb bay doors opened briefly, releasing precision-guided munitions that streaked toward their targets. Rain immediately banked hard to the left, climbing rapidly to avoid any possible counterfire. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the night lit up with multiple explosions as each weapon found its mark. The enemy armor column was engulfed in fire and smoke. Spirit 7, this is Ranger Actual. The voice over the radio was tight with emotion. Direct hits on all targets. Hostile forces neutralized. You just saved 40 lives. Just doing my job, Rangers, Rain replied. Safe journey home. In Hangar 7, a cheer went up from the assembled crew. Davis found himself grinning despite the tension of the situation, but the mission wasn't over. Rain still had to exit hostile airspace without being detected, and enemy air defenses would be fully alerted now. "Command, this is Spirit 7. Rain's voice came through the radio, tension creeping in for the first time. "I've been painted by hostile radar, taking evasive action." The celebration in the hangar died instantly. Everyone knew that being painted meant enemy missiles could be inbound. Colonel Harrison pressed his earpiece. "Spirit 7, we have no assets available to assist. You're on your own." "Understood, Command." Going dark, the radio went silent. For the next hour, there would be no way to know if Rain had escaped or been shot down. The waiting was agonizing. Chief Martinez turned to his crew. "That's what real pilots do," he said quietly. "They accept impossible missions and somehow make them possible." "Think she'll make it back?" Davis asked. Wilson was studying the flight plan on a computer terminal. "If anyone can, it's her." The Ghostos and Talon didn't get that nickname by accident. As the hours passed, tension in both the hangar and command center reached painful levels. The Rangers had been successfully evacuated, but there was still no word from Spirit 7. Then, just before dawn, the radio crackled to life. "Falcon. Ridge Control. This is Spirit 7 requesting landing clearance." The relief was palpable. Rain had done it again, completed an impossible mission, and made it home. "Spirit 7, you are cleared for immediate landing. Runway 27. Emergency vehicles are standing by as precaution." Negative on emergency vehicles control. Aircraft is undamaged. Standard landing approach. 20 minutes later, the distinctive silhouette of the Batu appeared against the pre-dawn sky, settling onto the runway with Rain's characteristic precision. As the aircraft taxied back to hangar 7, the entire ground crew assembled in formation, not because they were ordered to, but out of genuine respect. When Rain emerged from the cockpit, she looked exhausted but composed. She handed her flight data to Chief Martinez. "Aircraft performed flawlessly," she reported. "No issues to note." Colonel Harrison approached with several senior officers. "Outstanding work, Captain. Those Rangers owe you their lives." Rain simply nodded. "They were doing their job, sir. I was doing mine." As dawn broke fully over Falcon Ridge, Rain gathered her few belongings. The mission was complete, but everyone understood that her time here was ending. She couldn't stay. Too many questions would be asked. Too much attention drawn to someone who was supposed to be invisible. Davis approached her one final time. "Captain, will we see you again?" Rain offered a slight smile. "You'll never see me coming, Airman, but when you need me most, I'll be there." She walked toward a waiting vehicle, then paused and turned back to the assembled crew. "Take care of each other. And take care of that aircraft. You never know when someone might need to borrow it." With that, she climbed into the car and was driven away, disappearing once more into the anonymity that had protected her for 5 years. The crew stood in respectful silence, watching until the vehicle disappeared from sight. They had witnessed something extraordinary, the return of a legend who had never really left, just remained hidden in plain sight, ready for the moment when impossible became necessary. The Ghost Talon had flown again, and 40 American families would never know how close they had come to tragedy, or who had saved their loved ones in the darkness before dawn. 3 weeks after Rain's dramatic mission, Falcon Ridge Air Base had settled back into its routine operations, but the story of the mysterious civilian contractor had taken on a life of its own. Despite orders to maintain secrecy, word had spread through the tight-knit military aviation community. Pilots and ground crews from other bases were calling with questions, trying to verify if the legend they'd heard was true. Colonel Harrison found himself fielding increasingly uncomfortable inquiries from Pentagon officials who had somehow caught wind of the unauthorized mission. In his office, he reviewed the carefully sanitized after-action report for the dozenth time, ensuring Every detail supported the official fiction. "Sir," his aide knocked on the door. "General Morrison is online too. He says it's about the systems audit incident." Harrison's stomach dropped. General Morrison was the Air Force Chief of Staff, not someone who called about routine matters. "Colonel Harrison," the general's voice was carefully neutral when Harrison picked up. "I understand you had an interesting visitor recently." "Sir, I'm not sure what you're referring to. A civilian systems contractor who happened to be qualified to fly emergency missions." "Come now, Colonel. I may be old, but I'm not stupid." Harrison closed his eyes. "Sir, I can neither confirm nor deny." "Relax, Colonel. You did the right thing. Those Rangers are alive because you made a command decision. But we need to talk about the bigger picture." Meanwhile, at Hangar 7, the ground crew was dealing with their own complications. A team of Air Force investigators had arrived that morning, asking pointed questions about the contractor who had been present during the emergency. Chief Martinez faced the lead investigator, Captain Brooks, across a small table in the hangar office. "So this Rain called her." Brooks consulted his notes. "She was here for how long?" 2 days, sir. Routine systems audit." "And during the emergency, she just left?" Martinez kept his expression neutral. "Yes, sir. I assume she didn't want to interfere with military operations." Brooks studied Martinez's face carefully. "That's interesting, Chief, because we have radio recordings that suggest a civilian contractor was present during mission planning. Sir, there was a lot of confusion during the emergency. People might have misspoken. The investigator wasn't buying it, but Martinez had been in the military long enough to know how to reveal nothing while technically telling the truth." In another part of the base, Airman Davis was having his own encounter with the investigation team. A stern intelligence officer, Major Williams, had pulled him aside for questioning. "Davis, we need to know exactly what this contractor said and did while she was here." Davis shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, she mostly just observed our work and took notes. But she demonstrated unusual knowledge of aircraft systems. I guess she seemed to know her stuff." Major Williams leaned forward. "Davis, this isn't a game. We have 40 rescued Rangers and a missing B-2 flight record from that night. Someone flew that mission, and we need to know who." Davis met her gaze steadily. "Ma'am, I was in the hangar the whole time. I saw Major Phillips get taken to medical with heat stroke. After that, I was focused on my duties. I didn't see anyone else qualified to fly." It was technically true. Davis hadn't seen Rain's official qualifications, only her actions. Major Williams made a note, clearly frustrated by the careful non-answers she was receiving. Across the country, in a small apartment in Denver, Rain, Calder was monitoring news reports about the successful Ranger rescue. The official story credited precision air support from an undisclosed military asset with saving the pinned-down unit. No mention of the pilot, no details about the aircraft used. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Package delivered successfully. Client satisfaction high. New opportunities available." Rain deleted the message without responding. She'd been expecting this word of the Falcon Ridge mission had reached the right circles. Other bases, other emergencies. Other situations where someone with her unique combination of skills and official non-existence might be needed. But something felt different this time. For 5 years, she'd moved from base to base, conducting real audits while maintaining her cover, always staying ahead of anyone who might look too closely. The mission at Falcon Ridge had been necessary, but it had also been visible. Too visible. Her laptop chimed with an encrypted email. The sender was identified only as Blackbird, but Rain recognized the secure communication protocol. She'd been wondering when this contact would come. "Dose Talon, your recent performance evaluation has been noted. Recommend immediate relocation to new assignment." Package includes transportation and documentation. Confirm receipt. Attached were plane tickets to Seattle and a new contractor. ID. This time is Rebecca Foster, specializing in avionics systems. Another base, another identity, another chance to disappear into the background until needed again. But as Rain packed her few belongings, she found herself thinking about the crew at Falcon Ridge. For the first time in 5 years, she'd allowed people to see who she really was, even if only for a moment. The respect in Davis's eyes when he'd realized his mistake, the professional camaraderie of working with Martinez and his team, the satisfaction of using her skills to save lives rather than just maintaining equipment. It had reminded her of what she'd lost when she'd accepted the ghost existence. Back at Falcon Ridge, the investigation was wrapping up with predictably inconclusive results. The investigators had found no evidence of unauthorized personnel involvement in the mission. No proof that anyone other than qualified military pilots had access to the B-2, and certainly no indication that a supposedly dead pilot had returned to active duty. Colonel Harrison was summoned to a final meeting with General Morrison, this time via secure video conference. "Colonel, I'm going to speak plainly," the general began. "We both know what happened at your base. We also both know that officially it didn't happen. The question is whether you can live with that arrangement." "Sir, I'm not sure I understand. The woman who flew that mission, she's been operating in a gray area for 5 years. Technically, she doesn't exist. Practically, she's one of our most valuable assets. The Pentagon has been quietly monitoring her movements, and frankly, we've been impressed." Harrison blinked in surprise. "Sir, are you saying—" "I'm saying that sometimes the best way to protect an asset is to let the world think it doesn't exist. Captain Calder made choices during Black Dawn that saved lives but couldn't be officially sanctioned. Rather than court-martial a hero, we gave her a different kind of service." "So this was all authorized?" General Morrison smiled grimly. "Colonel, if it had been authorized, there would be paperwork. If there's no paperwork, then officially, nothing happened. But unofficially, those Rangers are alive because you had the good sense to let a qualified pilot do her job." The truth was more complex than anyone at Falcon Ridge had realized. Rain hadn't gone rogue 5 years ago. She'd been recruited into a shadow program that used her unique situation to place her exactly where she was needed most. The system's audits were real, but they were also cover for a deeper mission, maintaining readiness for the impossible scenarios that conventional military planning couldn't address. In Seattle, Rebecca Foster, formerly Rain Calder, was settling into her new assignment at McCord Air Force Base. The C-17 transport aircraft there presented different challenges than the B-2, but the principle was the same. Ensure the aircraft were ready when heroes needed to do heroic things. Her new supervisor, Master Sergeant Jackson, briefed her on the facility. "We've got a good crew here, Miss Foster. Professional, dedicated. They take their work seriously." "That's exactly what I like to hear, Sergeant." As she toured the massive hangar filled with transport aircraft, Rain noticed the same dynamic she'd seen everywhere. Crew members who were competent, but had never been tested in truly impossible circumstances. They were good at their jobs, but they didn't know how good they could be when everything was on the line. Her phone buzzed with another encrypted message. New assignment parameters. Maintain cover. Conduct standard audits. Prepare for potential extraction mission in mountain terrain. Asset readiness critical. Rain smiled slightly. Somewhere, another group of soldiers might soon find themselves in an impossible situation. And when they did, they wouldn't know that their salvation was being prepared by a woman who officially didn't exist, working with crews who didn't know they were training to save lives. The Ghost Talon was ready to fly again, whenever and wherever she was needed. At Falcon Ridge, Life had returned to normal, but the legend remained. New personnel would occasionally ask about the mysterious contractor who'd been there during the incident, but the answers were always the same. Just a routine systems audit, nothing unusual to report. But in quiet moments, when the hangar was empty except for the massive silhouette of the B-2, the veteran crew members would sometimes pause and remember. They'd witnessed something extraordinary, the brief return of a legend who lived in the shadows, protecting those who protected others. And they knew that somewhere out there, she was still watching, still ready, still ensuring that when the impossible became necessary, someone would be prepared to make it possible. The investigation was closed, the files were sealed, and officially, nothing had ever happened. But 40 Rangers were alive, and that was the only truth that really mattered. 6 months after the Falcon Ridge incident, the shadow network that Rain operated within was facing its own crisis. In a secure conference room buried 3 levels beneath the Pentagon, General Morrison sat across from CIA Deputy Director Sarah Montgomery, reviewing a troubling intelligence report. "Our Ghost Talon asset has been compromised," Montgomery said, sliding a classified folder across the table. "Foreign intelligence services are starting to connect the dots." Morrison opened the file, revealing surveillance photos of Rain at various military installations over the past 5 years. The images were grainy, taken from long distances, but they clearly showed the same person at bases where impossible. Missions had subsequently been carried out. "How bad is it?" Morrison asked. "Bad enough. They haven't identified her yet, but they know someone is moving through our system. Someone with capabilities that don't officially exist." Meanwhile, at McCord Air Force Base, Rain was conducting what appeared to be a routine inspection of a C-17's cargo loading systems. But Master Sergeant Jackson had noticed something troubling about their contractor. She kept checking her phone, and her usual focused demeanor seemed strained. "Everything all right, Miss Foster?" Jackson asked during a break. "Just fine, Sergeant." "How's the hydraulic pressure holding on the aft cargo door?" It was a deflection, and Jackson knew it. Over 6 months of working together, he'd come to respect Rebecca Foster's expertise, but he'd also noticed that she sometimes seemed to know things that weren't in any manual. Today felt different, like she was expecting bad news. Rain's encrypted phone buzzed with a priority message. "Blackbird to Ghost Talon. Immediate extraction recommended. Your pattern has been identified by hostile intelligence. Extraction. Team inbound to your location." Rain closed her eyes briefly. After 5 years of careful movement, someone had finally put together enough pieces to see the bigger picture. The question was whether they knew who she really was or just that she existed. She typed back. "Pattern confirmed. Request 24-hour. Delay for mission critical assessment." The response was immediate. Negative. Extraction non-negotiable. Report to designated coordinates in 2 hours. But Rain had noticed something during her inspection that morning. Signs that McCord was about to become much more important than anyone realized. Equipment staging, unusual flight planning, personnel assignments that suggested a major operation was being prepared. If she disappeared now, there might not be anyone qualified to handle whatever crisis was developing. At Falcon Ridge, Airman Davis, now promoted to Staff Sergeant, was monitoring communications when an encrypted priority message came through. The content made him sit up straight. Intelligence indicated that foreign operatives were actively hunting for a phantom pilot who had been involved in several classified missions. Davis immediately contacted Colonel Harrison. "Sir, you need to see this intelligence brief. It's about our contractor from last year." Harrison read the message. With growing concern, "They're looking for her." "Sir, should we warn her somehow?" Harrison was quiet for a moment. "Davis, officially, we don't know who her is. We had a systems contractor named Rain Calder who did routine work and left. That's all we know." But sir, but unofficially, Harrison continued. I hope whoever is looking out for phantom pilots is keeping them safe. Back at McCord, Rain was facing an impossible choice. Her extraction team would arrive in 90 minutes, but abandoning her post now felt like betraying the principles that had driven her for 5 years. She'd accepted the ghost existence to serve a purpose, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Master Sergeant Jackson approached her workstation. Ms. Foster, we just received orders to prep 3 C-17s for immediate overseas deployment. Special operations support. Rain's blood chilled. Special operations meant high risk, low visibility missions. Exactly. The kind of situation where having someone with her experience embedded in the support structure could mean the difference between success and disaster. Timeline? She asked. Wheels up in 6 hours. Full combat load. Destination classified. Rain made her decision. She typed an encrypted message. Ghost Talon to Blackbird. Cannot extract at this time. Special operations deployment imminent. My skills are needed here. The response was immediate and angry. Extraction is not optional. Your cover is blown. Report to extraction point immediately. Negative, Rain typed back. Mission takes priority. For the first time in 5 years, Raincalder was officially disobeying orders. But she'd learned something important during her time in the shadows. Sometimes, the greatest service required the greatest sacrifice. She turned off her encrypted phone and focused on the C-17s being prepared around her. 3 aircraft, elite. Special operations teams, destination unknown, but certainly dangerous. If something went wrong, if the mission parameters changed, if the impossible became necessary, she would be there. Jackson noticed her sudden focus. Something wrong. Ms. Foster? Just want to make sure everything is perfect, Sergeant. These crews are going into harm's way. 20 minutes later, Rain's extraction team arrived at McCord, posing as Pentagon auditors conducting a surprise inspection. Their leader, a cold-eyed man in a civilian suit, approached Jackson. We're looking for your systems contractor, Rebecca. Foster, we need to speak with her immediately. Jackson's instincts kicked in. These men didn't feel right. Too tense, too focused, too much like hunters who'd found their prey. I'm sorry, but Miss Foster is conducting critical mission prep work. She can't be interrupted. This isn't a request, Sergeant. And this is a military installation preparing for combat operations, Jackson replied firmly. No one interrupts mission-critical work without proper authorization. The man in the suit pulled out credentials that looked official but felt wrong. These are proper authorization. Jackson pretended to study the credentials while subtly activating a silent alarm that would alert base security. Something was very wrong here. Meanwhile, Rain had noticed a commotion near the hangar entrance and recognized the signs of an extraction team that had shifted into hunting mode. They weren't here to protect her anymore. They were here to eliminate a security liability. She moved deeper into the hangar, using the massive aircraft as cover while she assessed her options. The C-17s were nearly ready for departure, but the special operations teams hadn't arrived yet. If she could just maintain her cover for another few hours. Her commercial phone rang, the one not supposed to exist in Rebecca Foster's identity. Only one person had that number. Davis? She answered quietly. Captain, wherever you are, you need to know. There are foreign intelligence operatives actively hunting for you. But there's also something else. We're monitoring chatter about a planned attack on Special Operations Forces. Tonight, wherever. They're deploying. Rain closed her eyes. The mission she was supporting wasn't just dangerous, it was compromised. And she was the only person in position to do anything about it. Davis, I need you to contact Colonel Harrison immediately. Tell him the Phantom pilot says, check the manifest on tonight's special deployment. Someone on the inside is feeding information to the enemy. Captain, are you safe? Rain looked across the hangar at the extraction team that was now systematically searching for her. Define safe, Davis. She ended the call and made another impossible decision. The extraction team thought they were hunting a rogue intelligence asset. The foreign operatives were looking for a phantom pilot. But what they were all about to discover was something much more dangerous. A woman who had spent 5 years preparing for exactly this kind of betrayal. Rain Calder had accepted death once to serve her country. Tonight, she might have to accept it again. But first, she had special operations teams to protect and a betrayal to expose. The ghost Talon was about to become visible one final time. The hangar at McCord Air Force Base had become a battlefield of wills and hidden identities. Rain moved between the massive C-17s, staying ahead of the extraction team that was systematically searching for her. She disabled the facility's external communications to prevent them from calling for backup, but that also meant she was cut off from any support. Master Sergeant Jackson was becoming increasingly suspicious of the Pentagon auditors. Their behavior, their questions, their obvious familiarity with combat tactics rather than bureaucratic procedures. Everything pointed to them being something other than what they claimed. "Ma'am," he said to the team leader, "I'm going to need you to wait in the visitor area while I contact my commanding officer." "That won't be necessary, Sergeant," the man replied, his hand moving subtly toward his concealed weapon. "We just need to locate Miss Foster for a routine security briefing." Jackson's military instincts kicked in fully. These weren't auditors. They were operators. And they were hunting someone on his base. "Sir, I'm going to have to insist." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the special operations teams, who would be deploying on the C-17s. 20 elite soldiers in full combat gear entered the hangar, immediately changing the dynamic of the situation. The team leader, Captain Reynolds, approached Jackson. "Sergeant, we're here for the 0300 deployment. Are the aircraft ready?" "Yes, sir, but we have a situation developing." "What kind of situation?" "Before Jackson could respond, Rain emerged from behind one of the aircraft. She'd made a decision. The only way to protect the special operations mission was to expose herself completely. "Captain Reynolds," she called out, her voice carrying the authority that had been hidden beneath Rebecca Foster's civilian contractor. "Facade, your mission has been compromised. There's a leak in your intelligence chain." Reynolds turned, studying Rain carefully. "And you are?" "Someone who's been watching your six for longer than you know." The extraction team leader stepped forward aggressively. "Captain, that woman is a security risk. We need to take her into custody immediately." Reynolds looked between Rain and the supposed auditors, his tactical mind processing the conflicting information. Something wasn't adding up. Rain made the choice to trust him. "Captain, check your mission parameters against what happened to Operation Brightwater 6 months ago. Same intelligence source, same operational security, same kind of random enemy contact that shouldn't have been possible." Reynolds' expression sharpened. Operation Brightwater had been a disaster, a supposedly secure special operations mission that had walked into a perfectly prepared ambush. Only quick thinking and superior training had prevented it from becoming a massacre. "How do you know about Brightwater?" Reynolds demanded. "Because I've been tracking the pattern for 2 years. Someone in your intelligence chain has been feeding information to enemy forces. Tonight's mission follows the same profile." The extraction team leader was reaching for his weapon when Master Sergeant Jackson stepped between him and Rain. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some actual credentials. The kind that can be verified through official channels." It was the moment everything changed. The extraction team leader, realizing that their cover was blown and their mission was failing, made a fatal decision. He drew his weapon, pointing it at Jackson. Step aside, Sergeant. Now. The hangar erupted into controlled chaos. The Special Operations team immediately took defensive positions, their own weapons drawn. Rain dove behind the landing gear of the nearest C-17, her mind racing through tactical options. Captain Reynolds' voice cut through the tension. Lower your weapons immediately. Identify yourselves. We're Pentagon security conducting a classified operation, the team leader said, but his authority was evaporating rapidly. If you're Pentagon security, Reynolds replied coldly, then you know that threatening military personnel during active combat preparations is treason. Rain realized this was her moment. She stepped out from cover, hands visible but ready. Captain Reynolds, my name is Rain Calder. Former B-2 pilot, officially deceased, currently operating under classified assignment. These men are not Pentagon security. They're here to eliminate a witness to 5 years of unauthorized operations. Reynolds studied her face, then spoke into his radio. Base security to Hangar 5, Priority 1. We have a hostile team on site. The extraction team leader made his final mistake. He shifted his weapon toward Rain, and that was all the provocation Special Operations soldiers needed. In seconds, the threat was neutralized with the precise efficiency that made them elite. As base security secured the scene, Rain approached Captain Reynolds. Captain, you need to scrub tonight's mission. The intelligence package is compromised. Based on what evidence? Rain handed him her encrypted phone, showing the communication logs she'd been monitoring. The same signature digital fingerprints that preceded Brightwater, Operation Sandstorm, and 3 other compromised missions. Someone with high-level access has been selling your people out. Reynolds studied the data, his expression growing darker. This intelligence came from Dot. Colonel Marcus Webb, Pentagon Intelligence Division, Rain finished. He's been feeding operational details to foreign bidders for at least 2 years. The weight of the revelation settled over the group. Webb had been responsible for dozens of special operations missions, any one of which could have been compromised. Why should we trust you? Reynolds asked. Rain looked around the hangar at the faces watching her. Master Sergeant Jackson, who'd protected her despite not knowing who she really was. The special operations soldiers who'd risked themselves to defend strangers. The support crew who just witnessed their carefully ordered world turned upside down. Because 5 years ago, I made a choice to disappear rather than let political convenience override what was right. Tonight, I'm making the choice to reappear for the same reason. Captain Reynolds made a command decision. Sergeant Jackson, I need secure communications to Pentagon operations. Priority Alpha. We're scrubbing tonight's mission and initiating a counterintelligence investigation. As the immediate crisis was handled, Rain found herself in the unusual position of being officially visible again. The ghost existence was over. Too many people knew. Too much had been exposed. Colonel Harrison arrived at McCord within 6 hours, having flown directly from Falcon Ridge when he'd received word about the incident. Captain Calder, he said when they finally spoke privately, it's time to come in from the cold. Rain nodded slowly. What about the program? The shadow operations? There will always be a need for people who can do the impossible. But maybe it's time to do it officially again. And the consequences? Black Dawn, the unauthorized actions. Harrison smiled. Captain, you just prevented a massacre and exposed a traitor. I think the Pentagon is prepared to officially forget about ancient history in exchange for current heroism. As dawn broke over McCord Air Force Base, Rain Calder stood in full uniform for the first time in 5 years. The ghost talon patch was back on her sleeve, but this time it was accompanied by official rank insignia and a new assignment, Special Operations Aviation Support, with a mandate to prevent exactly the kind of intelligence compromises she'd been tracking. Master Sergeant Jackson approached as she prepared to leave. Captain, will we see you again? Rain smiled. "Sergeant, this time, when I show up, you'll know exactly who I am." The Special Operations mission was successfully rescheduled with clean intelligence. Colonel Webb was arrested for treason, and 40 soldiers who would have walked into an ambush instead returned home safely. But more importantly, Rain Calder was no longer a ghost. She was back where she belonged, serving officially, protecting people who protected others, and proving that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who choose to disappear so others can shine. The Phantom pilot had finally come home. 1 year later, Hangar 7 at Falcon Ridge Air Base was bustling with activity as dignitaries, military personnel, and media representatives gathered for an unprecedented ceremony. The event had been classified until the morning it occurred, but now the story of the Ghost Talon was finally being told officially. Staff Sergeant Davis, now the senior mechanic on duty, supervised the final preparations with quiet pride. The B-2 Spirit bomber gleamed under the hangar lights, its surface meticulously maintained by a crew that had never forgotten the night their mysterious contractor had saved 40 lives. Colonel Harrison stood at the podium reviewing his remarks one final time. After a year of classified hearings, congressional briefings, and Pentagon reviews, the decision had been made to reveal the truth about the Shadow Operations program and about the pilot who had made it work. "Nervous, sir?" Davis asked as he approached. Harrison smiled. "A little. It's not every day you get to officially resurrect someone from the dead." At the back of the hangar, Master Sergeant Jackson from McCord had arrived with several members of his crew. They'd requested permission to attend, having become part of the story themselves. "Think she actually show up?" Jackson asked Chief Martinez. "She'll be here," Martinez replied confidently. "The Ghost Talon has never missed a mission." As if summoned by his words, a familiar figure appeared in the hangar doorway. But this time, Rain Calder wasn't wearing an unmarked flight suit or civilian contractor credentials. She walked in wearing the full dress uniform of an Air Force major, with ribbon bars that told a story of exceptional service and a newly minted set of wings that reflected her official return to active duty. The assembled crowd fell silent as she made her way toward the front of the hangar. For many of the younger personnel present, this was their first glimpse of the legendary pilot they'd heard whispered about in ready rooms and maintenance bays across the Air Force. General Morrison, who had flown in personally for the ceremony, stepped forward to greet her. "Major Calder," he said formally. Ben smiled. "It's good to have you back officially." "Thank you, sir. It's good to be back." Colonel Harrison called the ceremony to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor not just an exceptional pilot, but a model of what it means to serve with honor, even when that service cannot be recognized." He paused, looking directly at Rain. 5 years ago, Captain Rain Calder was officially killed in action during a classified mission. Today, we're here to correct the record and to recognize not just her survival, but her continued service to this nation in ways that few could imagine and fewer still could accomplish. The formal citation was read, detailing Rain's official achievements, her exceptional performance during Black Dawn, her successful deep cover operations maintaining aircraft readiness across multiple installations, her prevention of the McCord betrayal, and her instrumental role in exposing the intelligence leak that had cost American lives. But for Rain, the most meaningful moment came when Colonel Harrison called forward the ground crew from Hangar 7. "Major Calder," he said, "these men worked beside you when you were officially just a contractor. They've requested the honor of presenting you with something." Chief Martinez stepped forward carrying a carefully folded flag, not just any flag, but the one that had flown over Hangar 7 on the night of the Ranger rescue mission. "Ma'am," Martinez said formally, "from all of us who've had the honor of serving with the Ghost Talon." As Rain accepted the flag, Davis spoke up from the assembled crew. Ma'am, we just want you to know. We never doubted you were exactly who you needed to be when you needed to be it. The emotion in the hangar was palpable. This wasn't just a military ceremony. It was a family reunion. General Morrison took the podium for the final remarks. Major Calder will be assuming command of the newly formed Special Operations Aviation Readiness Division. Her mission will be to ensure that when our people meet the impossible, someone is prepared to make it possible. After the formal ceremony, Rain found herself surrounded by well-wishers and colleagues. But she noticed someone standing quietly by the B-2, a young airman she didn't recognize. She approached him. Airman Matthews? She read from his name tape. Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to say thank you. My brother was one of the Rangers you saved that night. He's getting married next month, and his kids will grow up with their father because of what you did. Rain felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment. The choices, the sacrifices, the years of invisible service. Your brother saved himself, Airman. I just provided transportation. As the crowd began to disperse, Rain walked over to the B-2, running her hand along its familiar surface. Davis joined her. Strange to be back officially? He asked. In some ways, Rain replied. But you know what? The mission hasn't changed. Take care of the aircraft, take care of each other, and be ready when the impossible becomes necessary. And now? Rain smiled, looking around the hangar at the faces of people who had become more than colleagues. They'd become proof that service and sacrifice were recognized, even when they couldn't be acknowledged. Now, I get to do it all officially. With backup, with support, and with the best ground crews in the Air Force. Master Sergeant Jackson approached with a tablet. Ma'am, your first assignment just came through. There's a situation developing overseas that might require someone with your particular skills. Rain looked at the mission parameters, then at the assembled crew that would support her. For 5 years, she'd worked alone, invisible, and officially non-existent. Now she had something she'd almost forgotten she missed, a team. Well then, she said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had made her a legend. Let's get to work. As the hangar lights dimmed and the crowd departed, the B-2 Spirit stood ready once again. But this time, when the impossible became necessary, the Ghost Talon wouldn't have to fly alone. Rain Calder was officially back, and the skies would never be the same. The story that had begun with laughter and dismissal had ended with recognition and respect. Sometimes heroes hide in plain sight, waiting for the moment when the world needs them most. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get to witness the moment when they step back into the light. The Ghost Talon had finally come home to stay. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.